have made certain choices to feel like you're able to make a sustainable living, have a sustainable living in your home or for your professional practice? I'm not sure if there's a question in there somewhere, but
Yeah, no, definitely. Basically, how do you navigate through all the choices, and how I think that a lot of these choices provide us a false sense of control, or maybe even freedom, to live your best life.
yeah.
And just to note, I just heard my daughter and my husband came home. So if you hear a loud burst of crying, everything's okay. So, um,
Love her.
yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I was actually thinking the other day that I remember when I was in high school, I remember thinking when I'm going to grow up, I'm going to divide everything really well into like work and home life. And, and obviously that is not the case right now. So when you're
Especially,
talking about like, yeah, these choices, it definitely goes across my work life and my home life. And right now my work life is inside my home. So that's fun. But yeah, but when I was thinking about choices, you know, it starts off for me, like it started off on like a bigger scale as far as, I came to this country, I'm an immigrant, I came from Romania, and when we left, Romania was communist, and you didn't necessarily have that many choices in general. From, I mean, you did as far as career goes, but like not so much, and you certainly didn't as far as consumer goods go. And this is something I've thought about a lot because, people didn't always have all these choices. And here, like I remember my grandparents coming to visit when I was a teenager, and they were just like flabbergasted by all the choices, and this feeling of abundance. Like you walk into any supermarket and you're just like, man, I could have anything. And what does that really mean? And I don't have any of the answers to this. For me, I think today is more about like, what are the questions we're asking? Because what does all this abundance mean? And what do all these choices mean? I mean, um, I'm lucky enough to be able to, say, okay, I'm going to choose organic when I can. I'm going to choose local. We do our CSA, Farm Direct Co-op, once that starts up, for our produce, because we can. But when I say that the burden is on the consumer, if I go to the store, it's going to take me 3 hours to literally like parse through all of the different choices. And this is definitely, again, like a privileged position where you could even do that. But I remember like last week, well, now I don't go to the market because of our current coronavirus situation. And I'm currently pregnant again, so I have to stay a little more sheltered. But for instance, Michael, my husband, he texted me last week from the market saying, okay, I need to buy peanut butter. Do I buy salted organic or unsalted not organic? And it's like, like there's so much all the time. And then you're made to feel like, oh, if I didn't get the right thing, am I contributing to, climate change? Am I contributing to, oh no, like now chocolate, like, is it fair trade? Is it not fair trade? Like every little decision you make, you kind of start seeing the implications of all of that. And to me, it feels very heavy. Like it feels both frivolous and heavy at the same time, which is kind of like mind numbing. So I think that's what I mean when I say the burden of choice, and having too many choices versus making do with what you have.
yeah.
There's nothing I love more than a pantry meal where you're just like, all right, I'm not going to the store. Like, let me just work with, like a can of chickpeas and see what I can do.
Right. And it's interesting because I know some people that are watching may have attempted to make some changes, whether it was before all of this happened or in light of, kind of being forced to make some changes, maybe for the better, for sustainable options for, food consumption, product consumption, whatever it is. And a lot of those things can be challenging. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. This never happens. But yeah,
I
it can
have
be
that effect on people.
right. Well, I'll just listen to you talk. You can just host this one. No, it can be overwhelming to figure out where to begin. And I don't think that there's any right answer. Like you're saying, these are questions. Like, what is, I just started composting, which is something I had been talking to myself about since college. It's not very easy when you have roommates to, get everyone on board with some of those practices. Shout out to Black Earth Compost. They're kind of a local one here on the North Shore, which is a great service, but there's so many small businesses that you can support. So, and that's why I was happy to have you and on this conversation, because you do that. You're thinking about not only like individual artists in your participatory design work, but also when you think about shopping, shopping small for food, you're part of a CSA. So I know some of the local CSAs are a little backed up now. The demand has actually been much higher because they deliver, or it's a little bit more of a contained experience as far as food shopping goes. But I want people to think about the things that you can do, at a scaled rate, because thinking about like, oh, I want to say that I'm living more sustainably, it takes time. And clearly there are collective systems in place here, even in Massachusetts, but of course across the states, across the world, that kind of make it near impossible to feel like you're doing 100%, the right thing. And I know I feel that way now. It's trying, there's things that I know that I need for my home. People that aren't shopping online on certain websites for certain reasons, and trying to navigate that. So if there's resources that anyone wants to share while you're watching, like groups, I know like there's a lot of local sell nothing groups and that kind of thing. But yeah, I digress. If it's acting with intention, it can be overwhelming. It's like your big picture goal is to, have less waste. Maybe you don't want to shop from places that are supporting, large factories in other countries. And I don't know, it can be a lot once you learn, once you start getting woke about some of these things, you're like, what does my one person's change, or your family, even if your household is able to join in, like, does that feel like it makes an impact? And it does.
And I think, well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's yes and no. And I think that is a key question, because there's, on the spectrum of sustainable living, there's the individual, and then there are these huge corporations. Like, if you start composting versus, Walmart started, or if you decide, okay, I'm only going to buy organic cotton or whatever, versus Walmart deciding to do that. Obviously, Walmart deciding to make a sustainable, sort of responsible decision, that's going to have a much greater effect. And I've just been reading articles that kind of pendulum swing back and forth between what can the individual do, and is the individual doing things just to make themselves feel better, like, oh yes, I'm composting, I can feel good now, versus is this having real change? And I would argue that for all of these questions, in a way, the answer is both. And and I guess one of the in an article I read, one of the examples they used is this woman spent, I think it was something like 8 hours researching like the perfect purse she was gonna get, made from leather that was upcycled and whatever. But she said, oh well, maybe I should have used those 10 hours to join a local group that was working, for local legislation in, urban agriculture or whatever it was. So how do you make the choices of where you're going to spend your time, and where you're going to have the most impact? And I think, the answer is you do what you can, but also one of the things that has helped me is just going back to what your value system is and trying to understand, what is the current value system in our society. And I would argue that right now, we're um or let's say up until this year, really the values have been convenience has been a
Mhm.
huge one, right? Like what's convenient, like the gig economy. And we're obviously seeing the ripple effect of people not having insurance, and people not having unions that can fight on their behalf.
Mhm.
But we were valuing convenience, we were valuing efficiency. And we see the problem with efficiency in supermarkets is that now, there's going to be a meat shortage because there was no redundancy in systems, right? And of course, the value of choice, which is what we started with.
Mhm.
And I've been really trying to formulate, like, okay, well, if those, as far as I see them, my personal top three of the current societal values are convenience, efficiency, and choice. How can we move to, instead of convenience, intentionality, right? Which is what we talked about a bit. Instead of
Yeah.
um, efficiency, resiliency, which we hear about resiliency a lot, but that, like, it's funny. And what does resiliency mean? Like, in a way, a local farm could be more resilient, right, than a huge mega sort of factory that is a what am I trying to say? Where, like, oh my god, I'm losing my words, but basically, where meat is produced,
Yeah.
or and that local farm could say, okay, well, I used to make all of my income from selling to restaurants, and now restaurants are obviously not in as much need, so I'm going to create a CSA. And
Mhm.
so, like, they were able to switch like that. And at one point, do institutions get so big, we hear a lot like too big to fail, but maybe it's like too big to be resilient, too big to
Mhm.
be nimble, too big, to
Right, well, there's so many layers to some of these bigger supply chains, obviously. And if you remove
exactly.
one, they're not able to just pivot. And I'm happy that you brought up the meat shortage. I'm somewhat aware of it. My mom called me the other day, like maybe she's watching. I don't know. Hi, mom. She watches this week. She's so cute. She's like, have you heard about this meat shortage? And I'm like, honestly, maybe this is a good thing. Like, I don't know. I have always been kind of back and forth um, with the importance of like having a more plant-based diet. I know that it's for a lot of people, it's not reasonable. It's not possible. For myself, I was like a fourth grader, like telling my mom, like, I don't want to eat meat. I didn't really know why. I thought it was just like, maybe I saw a video
I
or
just thought it was
something. You know what I
gross.
mean? And so phases through my life, whatever, this is like backstory, but phases through my life, like I've gone back and forth with it. For the most part now, it's just like after college, I was like, no food restrictions. Like I'm going to eat what I eat. And we like you said, we have access to plenty of different options here. Very lucky, but I think I think we know there's a huge problem with factory farming, especially in, in, in meat farming. I mean, it's, it's catastrophic essentially. And I think that there's some room now for people hopefully to be able to renavigate their weekly menu, whatever it is, whatever, especially if you are able to continue getting groceries, fresh
Mhm.
food. I think there's just that's what has brought me to this conversation, and my want to have these conversations with people, because we are now being faced with challenges that are just like bringing things that a lot of folks have been aware of. Maybe some people have been like, advocating for so long. And like, we can either try to continue going back to the way that we were living prior to 2020, or we can make the changes that are going to allow us to be a little bit more sustainable in the consumer world. But yeah, it's the meat thing is interesting. And
Yeah.
I don't know where it fell. You know what I mean? Like if it's a domino effect, was it like one part of the supply chain, or is it just because people can't go to work? Like they're not having as many people in their factory working because someone was ill, or I don't know. It
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
you think about the big picture a lot more.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think part of it is that even though like a lot of compared to meat production, a lot of people still, there's small organic farms that could maybe take up some slack, whereas there aren't as many small meat producers, I believe. But this, when I was growing up, again, back in the motherland, I mean, I went through several winters where I had to, I had to witness the slaughtering of a pig, because what you do in Romania is you buy the whole piglet in March for springtime is when apparently piglets arrive, and you have him or her, fatten him up until Christmas time, and then you slaughter, and then you have meat for the rest of the winter. So so one animal,
more personal connection to your food, and I think that that's a huge.
It's still disturbing, don't get me wrong, but it's but that's a sort of extreme example on the road that, like, now I think there are kids who literally you can't even make the connection between that pork chop and the fact that it came out of an animal.
Yeah. That was one of the things that when I started transitioning back into eating meat again, it was like, okay, I want to know where this thing comes from. Like, if I don't know, then that's not good. Like, you go to the grocery store, like, you might be able to track some of the supply for said supermarket based on the brand, you know what I mean? But you don't know really probably where the egg came from. Like, and I know there's a lot of documentaries that like really dig at it. I just think that we can do better. And I hope.
Yeah. And I think what's exciting is that this is showing that there can be a big shift in how people live. Like, period. Like, whether, like, not even judging the merits of that shift, but the fact that a shift can happen, I think is really encouraging. And I think that, again, if we can be intentional, if we could on a bigger level, how can we shift towards more sustainable living? And so I think that what this sort of, shelter in place pandemic shows is individual action is necessary and valuable, but it has to be supported by a larger framework.
Yeah.
Because if the governor was not there every day saying, yes, we are still staying at home, and now we have to wear masks. I mean, we are having that sort of, getting marching orders from on high, so to speak. And so if that, and so that's a value shift. Like, now to be a patriot, it's, you want to stay safe, you want to stay home, you want to wear your mask. That shows that you are caring about other people in this pandemic and trying to protect those who can't stay home. So how is it, like, what are the shifts in our behavior and our lifestyles going to be, and who are they going to come from, and how are we going to create a system that is sort of holistic and reaches enough people to make a shift?
Absolutely. So I have one question from Sam, which is good, and we kind of touched on this, but maybe this will bring up some more. What are your top tips to not get overwhelmed by learning and changing your habits for sustainability? Definitely, like, starts to make us go into this tips thing that we're going to do at the very end of the episode in just a few more minutes, but maybe there's something else that comes to mind. Like, what are your top tips to begin that transition?
I think, yeah, no, that's a hard question, because I do get overwhelmed. But I think that one tip is to really focus in on what your own value system is. And in the same way, it's important to create boundaries for yourself. It is important to create, a system of values for this, so that you don't get overwhelmed. And if, and really, like, choose one or two things that you're going to say, I'm going to care about this right now. I cannot, fix everything. And then analogous with that is, practicing, I kind of hate the term, but, practicing self-care, like, really realizing that, treating yourself well is the first step. Actually,
and then it's kind of like maybe also like reaffirming to yourself that, like, it's not really your fault that you are being burdened with these choices. I think too is like, this should have already been a key part of our culture, but
absolutely.
There was something I was going to say. This is bad today. I think it's because it's sunny out and I just want to go play outside.
Well, I
But
was thinking of
because your parents,
outside.
that I remembered, because you're a mom, I know that you use like cloth diapers, like small things like that. Like if that's something that's, and I'll be curious to see if how you feel about it when you have two little ones, maybe both in diapers at the same time for a while.
Yeah.
But I think that's an amazing thing, because so many people, like in the United States, I know, like they would never consider that, like how wasteful that is, and it's literally at the core of like our, you know what I mean, it reproduction, right? Like we're having kids, which, you know, there's a whole conversation about that. Lots of people have different feelings about what that means, but you know, diapers is like
Yeah.
highly wasteful.
It is. And yeah, like going along with both choice and convenience, like, you know, disposable everything, right, is a marker of both this illusion of abundance and this convenience. And yeah, we decided I had to do cloth diapers because I've done so many art projects, and a lot of my, and actually, you know, even, sorry, not to go on a tangent, but even temporary art projects that use like raw materials, I have weird feelings about, because, you know, it's temporary, and then what are you going to do with it? So a lot of my projects have tried to use, you know, upcycled materials or use waste materials. And so if I'm advocating for this in my professional work, how can I didn't feel personally comfortable using disposable diapers. And that's not even a judgment on other people. It's just, you know, what do you feel comfortable with? And I think that goes back to Sam's question. But I will say, so full disclosure, at this point, however, we are using disposable diapers at night and during nap time, because the cloth diapers were just leaking. They could not keep up with, she drinks a lot of water. And it's interesting, I think, to just, again, being intentional, like observing your life, like trying to step back and not judge yourself. I think that's what you were getting at, Katie, when you were saying like it's not your fault. I think one of the ways to not get overwhelmed actually is to not judge so much. Like we're so used to judging, and especially judging ourselves. So it's like not even judging yourself, but you know, she had a diaper rash and we used disposable diapers for 2 weeks. And then we just saw like, wow, this is truly an amazing amount that, you know, we've kept from landfills, you know, by not using this. So I think, you know, just kind of observing your life and seeing like where you can make a little change.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So on the topic of making do with what you have, Claudia has a new blog post that we're going to go through a little bit on her site. 3 ways to unwaste. So these are things that you can do now, whether or not you're set up with that compost service that I mentioned earlier, or
That's
you
the third button. Yeah.
do some research and do it on your own for sure. If you have, you know, if you're not in a hyper urban area, if you have a little bit of a yard or a space to make compost, nonetheless, I'm going to share my screen here, so we can go over blog post. And again, if anyone's watching, you have questions while we're going through this, feel free. We end at around 11:45. All right. Can everyone see that over here? All right. Okay. You tell me, do you want to scroll? This looks good. This is what I need, because I never use all the produce that I like get excited at the grocery store. I'm like, I'm gonna be so healthy this week, you know, and then like next thing you know, I have like 3 bags of celery because no one snacks on celery in my house, and it's silly, but
yeah, no, it's so true. So yeah, so the 3 ways to unwaste, basically these are just personal things you could do yourself. And the stock one, the reason I like it is, you know, you could just have a jar or, you know, or Tupperware that you keep in your freezer, and any sort of ends, or like Katie's saying, like unused celery or anything like that, spinach, kale, it doesn't even matter. You know, all the veggies, you just put it in the jar, and then when it's full, you're like, okay, I will just boil this on low for however long, like an hour. I always add some bay leaves. And if you press the button, it'll take you to a professional cook's actual blog They're
Oh,
only
nice.
talking about like how to actually do that. And their broth looks a lot better than mine. But the other really cool thing about the stock and about like using like making do with what you have and going to the parenting side a little bit is I've been we've sort of gone one thing you'll learn, any of you if you are parents, is that kids just thrive on schedules. And because of the shutdown and everything, we've become somewhat scheduled. So usually what I do with her in the afternoons is I'll prep something for dinner. So let's say we have to chop up some carrots. Well, I'll start doing the peels. I won't let her use the peeler because she could peel herself. But she'll put each peel in a little container, and that way she like learns how to sort. She'll start like chewing on them, and since I've washed them and they're organic, it's fine for her to chew on peels if that's something you think about. But actually, so Katie actually has watched our little gal for a bit before, when she was not a picky eater, and she has become a picky eater. But her helping me sort out vegetables and be the sous chef basically has actually gotten her to start liking carrots, to start liking parsley, to start liking celery. So that's actually another fun sort of byproduct of this. And she gets to, and she plays with all those things. Like all of those things are toys. So it's like that's really making do with what you've got. So
I love that.
that's the stock. Yeah.
Art.
And
I
yeah.
love this. Tell us about this project briefly, maybe before. Well, maybe that's the whole point of this one.
Yeah. So because you asked for some sustainability tips, and I've just really been obsessed with waste in general, and this waste and then time. As a parent, you don't really have much time, but if you're someone who is creative and uses that as a way to both cope with the daily banalities of life and whatnot, you miss it if you don't have time to be creative. So I came up with this project as like a really quick way to make art, which was stick peels and tops and other food waste on a stick and call it art.
Wait, I'm gonna show more pictures because you have more on your.
And actually, if you click on the button too, yeah, that's from we did this at the Salem Food for Thought Festival. That was last year. So we had we collected scraps from local restaurants that they were just gonna either throw away or compost, and kids were able to make these sticks. And then we made a labyrinth that you could walk the composting walk to get people to think about it. So yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And again, this is just something really easy you could do with your kids at home. And then, once you do it, you could either compost it right away, or you could just leave it in your windowsill for a bit and see how it changes over time. The banana peel on the left, that was left for like, over a month or something, you could see it just kind of blackens and ossifies and turns into a cool shape. So
I love
yeah.
Fun. And compost.
So yeah, so the button on the compost one will take you to Black Earth if you want to sign up. I'm not getting a cut from this. I'm just an enthusiast.
No, neither am I. I just started their service, honestly, probably at the very beginning of the year. And I just ordered my so they have a facility, they collect your compost at home. If you live in Beverly, it's only like $6 or something. And
yeah, I think it's $7 in Salem. So
okay, great. Yeah. So, they provide you with the containers. You can go all out and go fancy with, if you want to get your own stuff for that. And then you can order the finished compost. So while people are gardening and getting their gardens prepared, that's available, which is pretty cool. But I do know that they're a little backed up right now. So if anyone's watching or interested, I'd get on that soon as far as compost and soil.
Or, because because we do need more people doing this, you could also call your city councilor and say, we need more composting available.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something, anything you want to do that you feel like you're not finding, you can always call your counselor and ask for that. And ask for ways to make that happen. Like a really quick throwback to when plastic was not used with the plastic ban, that started in Salem because a high school student, got up in front of the city council and said, I don't think there should be plastic bags here anymore. The whole country of Ireland banned plastic bags, and that's made a huge impact, even though it seems small. So again, so I think that goes back to our spectrum of individual action versus how can you make your individual action count collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And really fast, if you guys do go, one fun thing to do if you go on the Black Earth site is they have although you'd have to find it, I'm not sure where it is, but they have a great list of all the things you could compost, and you'd be surprised because
Yep.
it's not just veggie scraps, it is all meat, fish, bones, avocado pits, eggshells, hair. Trim your hair. You're gonna trim your hair at home now.
Stuff too. I was surprised. I was just looking at that recently too.
Yeah, like nail things. That's like gross, but you like everything. Yeah, there it is. Good.
Yeah.
And like if we try not to use paper towels very often, but if we do and it's just sopping up like food, whatever, we throw paper towels in there. All of that good stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, there's so much that we can do to begin making small changes. But I think, as you said, I didn't know that it was a high school student that had begun that plastic bag thing. So I think that's the overarching kind of theme, is that yes, you can make a difference as an individual, not only with the small amounts of waste that you might be able to diverge or whatever divert, and then also I'm like, what word is that, but also for advocacy. I mean, if there's something that you're really passionate about in sustainability and environment or in wellness, like there's outlets for organizing with like-minded people to get something done. I know a lot of places on the coast here, and I know Beverly, I think, doesn't allow plastic bags. I don't know if I'm misspeaking. But it's a ripple effect. So it doesn't hurt to spend some of that energy, sharing your ideas with other people, and doing what you can. So.
Yeah. And it's a long haul, like it doesn't like I think the personal actions that you do yourself are important because you get immediate like satisfaction and results. And then the collective action, that's just it takes a while, and as there is, going back to the plastic bag ban, just because that's an easy example, there's been a bill that's been trying to get passed in the state house for like years, for a while. And the reason that is because there are all these, there's all this minutia, like should we then charge 10 cents or whatever for paper bags that are going to be given out instead of so there are all these questions around it. However, while that's sort of in there, like percolating, more and more cities, I think we're up to over 70 cities in the state. And so then the proponents of the state ban, if they could say, well, we've got, over 70 cities who've already done this and they want something like this, versus we've got 3 cities, that sounds a lot better. So it's like, you could start seeing how your personal change is a building block to your, local change, up to the municipality and state, and etc. So kind of just seeing contributions as part of a system. I think that's really important.
I love that. That's awesome. Let's see if we have any last minute questions. Thank you for joining me today, Claudia. It's good to see your face. I miss you and your family and everybody. Maybe I'll try to ride my bike over to somewhere that there's chalk art happening and meet you somewhere.
Yes.
Masked.
You all look out for chalk art through May and June. Should be fun.
Hashtag Chalk Art Saturdays.
Chalk Art Saturdays, Salem Public Art, and Salem Together.
Awesome. Yeah. So if anyone, I'll be, sharing Claudia's information in the description of this video. And if anybody wants to be connected with her, let me know. And we look forward to
talk art.
Yes, talk art. I know I'll have to start something in Beverly. I'm just over the bridge, so
right there.
Time to continue that Crossing Waters Festival. Connect the two downtowns. It's so good. All right. Thanks again to Creative North Shore and Creative Collective for hosting us here, episode 4, Reasonably Well. And thanks again to Claudia. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.